All right. Let's talk arguments.
Mhm.
Get ready to win more arguments because today we're diving deep on how to argue and win every time. And, not just like a shouting match,
Yeah.
but, really getting what you want when you need to persuade somebody.
It is interesting how often we think of arguments as battles,
Mhm.
like just sheer force. But there's so much more nuance to it.
Yeah, for sure. And to help us out, we have some clips from somebody who's, well, a master, Gerry Spence, the trial lawyer.
Oh, yeah?
We're going to be checking out his book, How to Argue and Win Every Time.
His insights are so valuable, right? Decades of experience
Oh, absolutely.
in the courtroom.
Uh,
You're not theorizing. This is real life.
Absolutely. He's seen it all. And what I love is that he lays it out in a way that we can all apply this stuff. He does it. It's not just courtroom stuff.
Yeah, and he starts by addressing something I think we all deal with, just this resistance to arguing in the first place.
Mm.
Uses this great analogy of a dandelion.
Okay, the dandelion thing. Tell me more.
So, even if you chop a dandelion down, that root stays there.
Right.
Same with the human spirit, right? We have this drive to express ourselves, to seek justice,
Yeah.
to engage in life fully. But sometimes we need to give ourselves permission to actually do that.
Permission to speak our truth.
Yes.
I love that. But so many people, I think, get hung up on fear. Like they're just afraid to argue.
And Spence tackles that right away. He
Mhm.
actually tells us to think about reframing that. To
Okay.
reframe fear, not as like an enemy, but as an ally.
Wait, fear's our friend? What? How?
So he argues that fear can actually give us energy.
Mm,
It's a sign that we're engaged. We're really dealing with something important. So we don't want to let it shut us down, right?
right,
We can actually channel that
right.
and use it to focus and to persuade people.
Oh, so fear is like fuel.
Yes.
I like that.
Then he gets into this idea of personal authority. You are your own authority.
Didn't he tell that story about the directions to Disneyland?
Yes. He asks all these people for directions. Everybody says they know the way.
Right.
But Spence realizes authority comes from experience,
Yeah.
from understanding, not from just believing what other people tell you.
You have to find your own way sometimes.
Yeah, trust yourself. Trust your insight.
Don't just blindly follow.
Even when people disagree.
Yeah, I like that. But he also talks about respecting the authority of others, right?
Absolutely. It's not all about you.
Right.
It's about acknowledging other authorities too.
Yeah.
He uses a great example of his wife.
Imagine.
Yes.
Yeah.
And her approach.
Yeah.
Right.
Winning without arguing.
Exactly.
Right.
And it was so powerful because Spence described coming home late,
Right.
expecting this fight. But his wife, she welcomed him home, warmed up his dinner.
Killed him with kindness.
Exactly. She won without even engaging, really.
I love that story. It's so true. This actually leads to a good point. Like, what does winning an argument even mean?
Well, Spence challenges that traditional idea.
That somebody's got to lose.
Yeah, that it's about forcing someone to submit.
Right.
True winning, he says, is about getting to the outcome that we desire.
Okay.
And that could involve understanding, cooperating, or even love.
We're not looking at it as a battle. We're looking at it as like, how do we come together? How do we get the best result?
Exactly, for everyone involved.
I love that.
And this leads right into another one of his big points, the nature of power.
Okay.
He says power is not something you just have. It's a perception.
Hmm.
The power that people have over us is often the power that we give them.
This is where it gets really interesting. So if we're the ones giving it away, then we can also take it back.
Exactly. It's incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
Because it puts you in the driver's seat. You realize you have more control than you think.
Right. Now, he talks about this Swiss cheese personality, right? This is really interesting.
Yes, he describes people who use power to, like, fill in the holes
Oh, yeah.
in their character,
Right.
like Swiss cheese.
Yeah. So they try to build themselves up by, pushing other people down.
Exactly. Compensating for insecurities, for a lack of connection.
And then Spence actually argues that true power resides in the powerless.
That's a really interesting inversion.
It is.
He uses examples like David and Goliath,
Right.
the meek inheriting the earth. Strength can come from anywhere.
So sometimes it's about being humble, vulnerable,
Yeah.
like the oak that resists, the wind breaks, but the willow that bends survives. Speaking of strength, we got to talk about the foundation of any good argument, credibility.
Spence says it so well.
Uh-huh.
The first trick of the winning argument is the trick of abandoning trickery.
Yeah, no tricks. Be authentic.
Exactly.
He also talks about credibility detectors, which I think we all have.
Yeah, we just sense it
We do.
when someone's being genuine or if they're trying to manipulate
It's
us.
like when you're watching those debates on TV, you just know.
Yes,
Or listening to a sales pitch.
that gut feeling.
It's that gut feeling, yeah.
Yeah. And Spence uses this crazy metaphor, right? He talks about arguing as if you're naked.
That's a bold move, but it's about vulnerability.
Yes. Being open and honest can connect with people on a much deeper level.
He tells the story of that market vendor in London, right? Who just says, "Buy my vegetables, sir. I need the money."
And it worked.
So honest, so straightforward. Why do we overthink things so much?
It reminds us that being ourselves can be the most persuasive.
So simple, but so hard sometimes. Which brings us to something people forget all the time. Listening.
Spence says this is like the most important skill in arguing.
More than speaking, really.
He says hearing is passive, right? Just taking in the sounds, listening, that's engaging, understanding the other person.
He talks about the soul's ear, doesn't he?
Yes. Listening beyond just the words, to the emotions, to the needs behind what they're saying.
Reading between the lines.
Exactly. And he says we listen with our eyes, too. Body language, how they dress, even how they walk.
Wow, I never thought of that.
He used to watch the jurors walk to the jury box, just to size them up.
Wow. Okay, so we're listening to a whole lot more than just words here. Now, Spence gets into something that can be really tough. Arguing against prejudice.
He compares it to a room just packed with junk.
Oh, I get that image. Just clutter everywhere. So how do we even start with that?
Well, he says, we all have them. Prejudices, these ideas that get in the way,
Right.
can cloud our judgment. The key is to be aware of them,
Okay.
manage them, and create some space for new information.
So not pretending we don't have biases, just,
Right.
seeing past them.
Acknowledging them,
Yeah.
yeah. And then he
So-
talks about this cluster concept.
That's our concept. Okay.
How people's attitudes, like their prejudices, tend to,
Come in groups.
they come in groups, yeah.
So if someone has a strong opinion about, something,
Right,
they probably have similar opinions about other things that are.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So while he cautions against stereotyping, he suggests this concept can help us navigate those potential biases.
It's about recognizing the pattern, right? If we can figure out where someone's coming from,
Yeah.
then we can maybe, tailor our arguments to be more effective.
Absolutely.
And then he gets into this really tricky area, arguing against someone's self-interest.
Yeah.
He uses the example of the lumberjack in the old growth forest.
Yeah, it's a classic conflict.
Right, old grant.
Individual needs versus like the environment.
Yeah.
How do you persuade someone whose livelihood depends on,
Right.
something that might be harmful?
I think a lot of arguments kind of come down to self-interest, even if we don't realize it.
Absolutely.
So what do we do?
He suggests, instead of going head to head, appeal to common ground.
Okay.
Find those solutions that benefit everyone. So with the lumberjack, maybe we explore other jobs.
Right.
Protect the forest.
Everybody wins.
And exactly. It's a win-win.
It's not us versus them. It's that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've talked about, the mindset to go into it with, but how do you actually build a good argument?
Well, Spence loves storytelling.
Stories.
He saw it in the courtroom, how stories capture people, right? They make
Yeah.
the information stick, and there's that emotional connection.
He talks about that defector brakes example, right?
Yes. Starts the story at the end.
At the end. Okay.
Put you right there in the accident. The brakes slam, the car's out of control. It grabs you.
Whoa, you're right there with them.
Exactly. And then he takes you back, lays it all out.
So it's not just telling a story, it's using that story to persuade. Does he give any tips for how to actually do that?
He does. He says, first, figure out your main point, like your thesis.
Okay.
Then do your research, get the facts, and outline your points.
Mhm.
And this is important. Think about the other side. What will they say? How do you counter that?
So you have a plan, but you're also ready to
Right.
go with the flow.
Be flexible, adaptable. He also says pick a good theme. A phrase that sums it all up.
Oh, like a slogan?
Kinda, yeah. Like, let's put honor back in a handshake.
Yeah.
For a contract case.
I like it. It's catchy. It's about fairness.
Exactly.
So we've got the story, we've got the structure. What
It's
else?
preparation. He's big on that.
Preparation. But that's so boring.
Well, here's the thing. He doesn't see it as a chore. It's joyful. It's creation, like playtime.
Playtime for grown-ups.
Exactly. He wants you to write out your arguments, not to deliver them, but to explore, to refine them.
Oh, like you're talking it through on paper.
Exactly. And then he says to visualize the arguments, use vivid language, create those pictures in your mind.
Like that blacksmith example.
Yes, the blacksmith hammering that red-hot iron, the sparks flying.
Yeah.
Way better than just talking about strong metal
I
there.
can picture it. I can feel the heat. Okay, last thing. This is something we all struggle with. How to get people to actually listen to us, especially when they don't want to.
It is tough, right? Spence says something crazy about this. Give them all the power.
What? Give away your power.
Oh, it sounds wild.
Yeah.
But the idea is when you empower someone, they relax, they're less defensive.
They're not threatened by you.
Exactly. He tells this story about a lost hunter.
Okay.
He finds this hermit's cabin. He's starving, desperate. But he doesn't barge in demanding food. He hands the hermit his rifle.
He gave up his weapon, but that's so dangerous.
It was risky, yeah. But also brilliant. He disarmed the hermit.
Yeah.
Not just literally, but mentally too.
So, like, they could connect.
Exactly. It created trust where there was suspicion.
That's amazing. Vulnerability can be so powerful.
Oh, can. It reminds us there's more than one way to win an argument.
Spence mentioned some things people do wrong, when they're trying to connect, like that forced humor
Oh, yeah.
or, being fake nice.
It's so obvious.
You can practically hear those credibility detectors, like, going off in the room.
It undermines you right away. Spence is really saying, be yourself.
Tell the truth.
Yeah.
Be authentic.
It's the best way to get people on your side.
It makes me think of that saying, people may not remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
That's so true.
So if you make them feel, manipulated or whatever, you've already lost.
Absolutely. Authenticity is key to persuading anyone.
Yeah. Okay, so as we wrap up this dive into arguments, let's recap. What are the big takeaways for you from all this Spence wisdom?
Well, first, those dandelions, right?
Yeah.
Give yourself permission to argue. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't let fear stop you.
And remember, fear can be useful.
It can be fuel.
Yeah. And what about power? Who really has it?
The power we give to others, we can take it back.
Right. That's a game changer. And remember Spence's metaphor, arguing naked.
Oh, yeah. Such a powerful image.
So honesty, being vulnerable, that's how we connect.
And how we build credibility.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to the argument itself, what do we do?
Think story.
Stories.
They pull people in. And Spence gives us those steps to build a good one.
Yeah. And don't forget preparation. It's like playtime.
It can be fun.
Okay, last thing. That idea about giving the other side all the power. What do you think about that?
It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Empowering others can disarm them. It can open them up.
It's counterintuitive, but it makes sense.
It does.
Well, that's it for this deep dive. What stands out to you from all of this? What really hit home?
I think it's the human element, It's
Yeah.
not just about logic.
Right.
It's about understanding people, their fears, their hopes.
I love that. It's like Spence is showing us how to connect with people. And that applies to, more than just arguments.
Yeah, exactly. Negotiating, resolving conflicts. It's about those relationships.
So as you go out there and, face those arguments, remember what we talked about today. Be yourself, use that fear as fuel, and empower the other person.
You might just win them over.
That's a great way to put it. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive and learned some new things. And hey, listen to those Spence clips again. See what else you pick up on.
Maybe you'll hear something different now.
Until next time, happy arguing.